Greetings, information superhighway, and welcome to episode 7 of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. My name is Jared Zeidman. I am 10 out of 10 energy today because I've got Olympic fever. All of the sports have been great, but of course the basketball is where my heart is. Both U.S. teams, men's and women's, are off to great starts, but that's actually not what I want to call attention to today. I want to call attention to two other things. One, the attention to detail of these broadcast teams have been exceptional so far. Both the broadcasters and commentators on both the men's and women's side are really calling attention to the games within the games that really help give teams the competitive edge. Everything from defensive and offensive communication and rotation to huddling your teammates in between stoppages of play to the bench being engaged to what, resilience looks like and sounds like. If you are a young person or even a young coach that really wants to learn what this looks like in its highest art form, watch Olympic basketball. This basketball has been phenomenal so far. The international game is amazing. I think being from the women's side, we are a bit more accustomed to FIBA rules because our rules tend to match FIBA a little bit more. But if you're accustomed to the NBA and you're watching the Olympics for the first time, tune in. The games are intense. They're exciting. They score on the aggregate. So every second of every game matters. And it's just really, really great stuff so far. So that's thing one. Thing two, and those familiar with this podcast know I've said this before. I am so lucky to be a part of some great coaching networks. I am so lucky to have learned about coaching from incredible, incredible minds. And I feel very fortunate to report that I think I'm like the worst coach in my group of coaching friends. And my coaching friends think I'm good, and I've been told I'm good, but I don't think I'm that good. And let me tell you about one of the good coaches in my network. DBSC alumni. Only a few of you are going to know what that means, and that's fine. But DBSC alumni, assistant coach at Tulane, and most importantly, first female head coach from an African team to win at the Olympics. Head coach of Nigeria, Rena Wakama, and her Nigerian women's basketball team just recorded a massive upset as I sit down to record this, beating number 3 seeded Australia. So Nigeria 1-for-1 so far, massive win, the type of win that can transform the basketball prospects of a country. Congratulations to you, Coach Rena. All I ask is that one day when you're back home in the States, when you're back home in the States and getting ready for the collegiate season, that you jump on this podcast and tell me and the listeners all about it, because I can't imagine how awesome this experience has been for you so far. But how is that for an accolade? Nigeria's first Olympic win in 20 years. And Coach Rena is the first women's coach to ever do it for an African team. So wishing them the best of luck. And for everybody else watching and listening, please keep watching the Olympics. They are just so, so awesome. And in addition to being entertaining, they're extremely educational, especially with these intentional broadcasts. On the subject of being educational, I want to talk to you about what my plan is for this week's episode. Those who know me know that I've been coaching for the last 15 years, and I had to take a break last year after getting COVID pretty bad. And I want to get back into coaching, but right now I'm just physically not there yet. In the time since, I've been doing recruiting consulting, and this podcast serves as a vehicle to get more quality information out to people that are trying to navigate the recruiting process. So specifically high school athletes and families of high school athletes that just want a little bit more guidance in the process. I've encountered one very unique pain point over and over and over again in my consulting work thus far. And here is that pain point. Nobody understands what Division III basketball actually is. And I've had some D3 coaches on the podcast already, and they've talked to me about a few things. But after some recent conversations with kids I do consults with and with some AAU programs, it really occurred to me that I need to do like a Division III myth-busting episode. And I wanted to do it for two reasons. And by the way, what I'm about to say doesn't make anybody here a bad person. I understand how this stuff works. So first of all, if you run an AAU program, it's in your best interest to try to get your kids to the scholarship level, right? So for a lot of AAU programs, not all of them. There are some AAU programs that specialize in sending kids D3 and they're great. But for a lot of AAU programs, it's in your best interest to not know a ton about D3. Then similarly, I also understand how being a kid works. When I had dreams of, succeeding at the next level, I wasn't thinking about succeeding at a small private classical liberal arts college or a Division III state school that nobody heard of. And similarly, if you grow up watching ESPN and you're big into college basketball and you fill out your brackets around March Madness, you don't roll out of bed at age 13 and go, you know what? I think I am going to go play high-level Division III basketball. This is not how it works. But just because that's not how it works doesn't mean that Division III is not a fantastic option with tremendous coaches and unbelievably competitive ball. There have actually been a couple really interesting things that have happened of note on the Division III side. Recently, a couple of Division III teams went to the scholarship level and started winning a lot of games at the scholarship level with their D3 rosters. You're actually going to hear about one of those teams in today's podcast. Similarly, the basketball tournament, which runs every summer, just saw a huge upset where a team made exclusively of former Division III basketball players beat a former TBT champion in the opening round. D3 basketball is not to be slept on from a competitive standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and just from a standpoint of what day-to-day development of your athletes look like. These D3 athletes are lifting just like their scholarship counterparts. They're going through scouting reports just like their scholarship counterparts. They are bettering themselves day in and day out and being challenged to grow just like their scholarship level counterparts. So today, we're going to show you what D3 really is. And I have some very intentionally selected help to get that done. Sean Smiley and Zach Filzen were members of the UB men's basketball team when I was an administrative intern for that team. So long before I was a 37-year-old who doesn't know anything, I was a 24-year-old who didn't know anything. And that's when I met Zach and Sean. Now, Zach and Sean have a few things in common. First, they were both exceptional shooting guards at the Division I level. They both got a lot of burn. In my first year with the UB men's team, Smiley was in his senior year and Zach was a redshirt transfer. Transfer rules were different back then. Zach could not play that year. So he practiced with the team all year, but he didn't play. Smiley was the impact shooting guard that year. Smiley graduates. The next year, Zach is the starting shooting guard for UB. And they both made great impacts on that team. So these are D1 players with D1 work ethics, D1 approach to the game. Now, even though their coaching journeys differ a little bit, they both have experienced great success at the Division III level as coaches. Zach as a young head coach, Sean Smiley as an assistant coach. Now, the next thing they have in common, both of them were recently hired to do rebuilds at their now current coaching stops. Zach is the head coach at Bethel University, one of the most academically prestigious faith-based colleges in the country, located in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Sean Smiley is now at Fredonia State University. Fredonia, beautiful school in Western New York, also a part of the SUNYAC, which has been an outstanding athletic conference made up of state schools in New York. State University of New York Athletic Conference, if you're wondering what the SUNYAC is. Now, both of them are going to talk to you about their journeys and what led them to where they are. But here is the most important thing that you need to know about them going into this podcast. They are both really, really good at what they do. And they both chose to be at the Division III level at schools that are very good fits for them and their families. And you're going to learn how that impacts their recruiting. You're also going to learn everything else about how Division III works, from recruiting to money to parental involvement during the recruiting process to what it actually looks like day to day to how you need to have a certain perspective that is actually different and in some instances harder to be successful as a Division III athlete, than as a scholarship athlete. You're about to learn all of that right now from my two old friends, Coach Zach Filzen and Coach Sean Smiley. Let's dive in. I don't have a more eloquent way to say this, fellas. We've gotten older.
100%.
Yeah, so
the conversation we were just having, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Topics of conversation have changed.
Yeah, I'll let the audience in right here. By the time this airs, I will be a brand new dad, and I was just getting some parenting advice from. Now this is just crazy how time works. Like we're all on our own journeys at different speeds. Mm-hmm. Zach, you have a 6-year-old. Sean has toddler, and all the preparation has been positive. I'm not putting any words in your mouth, but it sounds like you are enjoying the balance of both coaching late teens and young adults, and also growing a young child. Is that fair?
Without a doubt. It's been awesome.
Yeah. No, it's definitely fair. Helps when you win, but it's fair.
No doubt. No doubt.
That's so awesome. Well, I'm so excited that you guys made this time. It's so good to see you, and I'm really excited to catch up with you publicly on this platform. So the parts you missed in the introduction is, I talked about your playing experience. I talked about our previous relationship, and I also talked about your choices and the directions you take. We talk a lot as coaches about fit-oriented decisions, and you both are coaching at places that ideologically fit you right now. And D3 in general is a decision that's based on fit. So I'm really excited to basically have you guys be our D3 men's basketball tour guides for this podcast. And I want to start really by opening this up, as really a roundtable discussion. We have all had impactful moments at the Division I level. I was introduced to college basketball when I was doing grad work with you guys playing at UB. Mm-hmm. You guys were successful D1 athletes. So I think maybe someone that doesn't understand what we do as much might see you guys or learn about our backgrounds and be like, well, why aren't they coaching D1? And I don't want to ask it that plainly. So instead I'll ask, what makes Division III right for both of you at this time?
Go ahead, Sean.
Cool. For me, it's honestly been, I look at it, and I always have, and not just in the frame of like my job, but also in the frame of players, how we prepare, I don't look at the levels as levels. And that probably changed after I got my foot in the door at the Division III level. All I ever knew growing up, I wanted to be a Division I player. That was the goal. That's what I worked hard for in middle school, high school. And, you achieve the goal as a player, and then that's the only world you know. But now that I've seen the other side, I don't see, and this is me talking, 16 years after my playing career now. I don't see levels anymore as it pertains to me and my job as a coach, as it pertains to recruiting guys, as it pertains to how we prepare as a team, how an individual player can potentially get better. I look at it a lot less as a decision of hey, I want to be a Division III coach versus a Division II or Division I coach. More of which opportunity provides me and now my family the best of what we're looking for in life. I'm in Fredonia right now. I'm 45 minutes away from where I grew up. So my parents are close by. My wife's parents are close by. We have a 2-year-old son. So all of that plays a role in it. The alignment with what I'm doing here at Fredonia and how my role is structured allows me to do the things I want to as a coach, but also as a dad, a husband, and son, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't see as much as hey, I'm going to consciously choose Division. There's great things about Division III that you don't get Division I. There's great things at Division I level that you don't get at Division III level. But for me, it's more of just okay, let's strip away the numbers, strip away the divisions and the levels, and look at every situation and every kind of place and institution separately, and what's the best situation for me. And that's where I ended up here, right? I get to lead a program. I'm a head coach. There's not that many basketball head coaches in the country, any level. So the opportunity to do that is pretty special. It's not lost on me at all.
That's awesome.
For sure. For me, my journey was a little bit unique in this sense, in two ways. I think the first one was I was exposed to Division III at a very, very, very young age. My mom was a head women's basketball coach at the Division III level, and now is again actually in the same league as me, which is kind of unique and pretty fun. But I got exposed to very high level Division III basketball at a really young age. Her program's top 10 in the country, top 5 in the country. Like they were legit. So I saw very quickly how good this level can be, how much talent there is at this level, and got exposed to this level at a very young age. So obviously played Division I basketball, but then from there, the other unique part was I kind of got thrown to the wolves as a head coach at 26 at a Division III in Pennsylvania, and
Lancaster.
No doubt, out east, back in the day, which feels like forever ago. It's crazy how fast time flies, but. I look back now, I'm like, what the heck was I doing? Like, 26 years old, no idea what's going on. I'm just figuring things out as we go. But I was fortunate enough to coach some pretty good teams out there, and I just fell in love with like this balance of, I think, the fit of institutions is a little bit more prevalent at our level, whether it be a faith-based school or whether it be an high academic or like whatever it may be. So you have kids coming to these schools for a lot of times the right reasons. I look at Sean and me, like we probably made decisions mostly based off basketball, right? When it comes to where we went to school, where we played in college, there's a beauty to the purity of the process, I guess, when it comes to our level. But then they also like the other beauty of it is like this level can be really, really good. And that's what people don't always understand. And you look at our league, okay, so I'm in the MIAC out in Minnesota. The last 3 years, one of the best players in our league has transferred to Division I and had success. Like we had to go play at Colorado State, play the NCAA tournament. We had a guy be second team all league in the Summit at St. Thomas. And then this past year, we have a kid transfer to the University of Minnesota. So the Big Ten. So like There's high level basketball, and there's just this beauty of combination of like fit plus, no, we can be really good, and being really good matters. And that's what we're going to chase. And so I think for me, it's that blend plus just there's a unique balance and feel for us and my family and for coaching at this level that's enjoyable as well. But yeah, that's kind of the big picture.
I love that because both of you have really alluded to fit. And it's interesting because knowing what I know about you guys are both at places that fit you. The alumni base at Fredonia raves about their experience at Fredonia and the connectedness of that campus and the accessibility of being a state school, which I know is important to your value system, Sean. And Zach, knowing you at a young age and how important faith was to you and your family, and now you're at one of the most standout faith-based institutions literally in the entire country. So what I think is so interesting is you guys as Division III coaches are walking the talk. You've kind of said what's important to you, and you're living those things, which is to me a very important segue into now your actual value system as coaches. Because one of the other really unique things about D3, and I know this from my decade experience at D3, is every coach is kind of pitching a different value system because of what you alluded to, Zach. There aren't scholarships, so you really are trying to find we can be very good, but I also have to find the right staff and school that resonates with me. So I always like to give any coach I'm talking to the podium to talk about the things that they matter the most. I like to kind of color code it as your personal philosophy, in air quotes. So we'll start with you, Zach, since you went second last time. I play by NFL halftime rules. You guys didn't know that. Walk through, Zach, your personal philosophy and what you're specifically trying to develop character-wise in your players. And I'll have you go after that, Sean.
Yep. No, that's great. I mean, faith is a big deal to me. So the opportunity to be an institution where I can incorporate that into what we do is a big deal. And I'd say the number one thing that we're about here is growth and development. And we want guys that are committed to their growth. We want guys who are passionate about their growth, both on the floor and off the floor. And that means they're humble, they're eager to learn, they're very receptive to coaching, and they're self-motivated. Like that's a big deal to me. It was a big deal to me as an athlete. And it's a big deal to me as a coach. Is like I want guys that they're passionate about this. This isn't intramurals. This isn't just like we just do it for fun. Like this is the real thing, and we want guys who want to get after it. So that's number one. I just want guys who are passionate about growth, who are passionate about the game, passionate about their faith. or want to grow in that area. The second thing is like we want guys who are willing to die to themselves and who are willing to fight to be connected and to be about each other, willing to put other people before themselves and serve. I think any great teams that we've been on, there's that common theme of selflessness, togetherness. You could say it in a lot of ways, unity, connection. Like those are things that are a big deal to us. And I think the last thing I would say is we want guys who are willing to do what it takes every single day to get better and to chase something really, really special. We use a phrase called choose the path. Like guys who are willing to choose the direction they want to go and know what it takes to be successful, and they're willing to attack it. And that's how success happens in life, right? Like that's one of the cool things for me is I think the same traits successful people have in life are the same traits successful teams have. And if we're growing one, we're growing the other. And in order for us to be a championship level program, we're in the process of building right now. In order for us to be a championship level program, like these traits we're teaching you, work, sacrifice, selflessness, integrity, toughness, resiliency, like you're going to need them for the rest of your life. So let's use the training ground right now of athletics of the court to prepare that. But it's also going to, if we do these things, we put ourselves in a really good position to be successful on the court as well. And so that's a big thing to me is like, can we use this beautiful, this awesome game of basketball to grow you, but then also can we be like-minded in how we want to approach the game and attack something really, really unique and really, really special.
It's always hard to follow Zach on stuff like this because he's so good. Like this is like
I was literally thinking that. I was like, oh, poor Sean. Zach's really crushing this.
Well, it's funny because like the number of times that him and I have had this conversation, he was a head coach long before I was. So like when I became a head coach, or even before, like when we've had these conversations, like this is the stuff we talk about. Because I think we're similar in that, he's got his like X's and O's philosophies, and I've got mine, and some are similar based on our shared experiences, some are not. But where we're very similar is that like the number one thing for us in our programs isn't X's and O's. It's all the other stuff that we think like the intangibles and the things you do off the court that lead to being able to do the X's and O's better. So yeah, we've talked about this a lot. So there might be some things that probably sound a little bit similar, just because again we had some shared experience. We have probably one of the reasons we're on the podcast together and have been friends for so long is we share some of the same priorities and how we organize our programs. But for me, yeah, a little bit different. Like from where I'm at now at a state school, I came here during COVID, and it was a huge rejuvenation of a program when I got here. So we didn't have a season the first year due to COVID, and then we were kind of rebuilding ever since. So we've been trying to infuse this program with guys who are passionate about what they're doing, who are passionate about coming to college. First of all, like that's an advantage of a state school. Like you said, Jared, is some of the accessibility is we have guys in our program that without an opportunity here at Fredonia wouldn't be in college. We have guys here who are the first people in their families to ever go to college, to ever graduate from college. So that's a really, really big piece of what we do and how we do it is understanding where you are, right? And having an appreciation for how lucky you are to be here, and how we, I guess, parlay that into basketball and what's important to our program is once you understand that, well, you can't take a day off. Because like you're the first guy in your family to go to college, like now it's time for you to step up, and you can't have a lazy day because everyone in your family is relying on you to graduate, relying on you to set the example for the other generations that are coming behind you. So I'm making it sound maybe like a little bigger than it is, but I think it's really important. It's like we try and find guys, we focus on a passion for what we do. Again, whether it's basketball, right? When you're in the gym for 2 hours during practice, like we want everything you have. When you're in class for an hour and 20 minutes, like we want everything you have. Like you're sitting in the first 2 rows. You don't have a hood on, you don't have a hat on, you have headphones in, right? Like you're locked in for an hour and 20 minutes. There's going to be times during the day where you get to hang out with your friends and relax. But like, we're really big on, hey, you got to give it everything you have. We have a saying that we put everywhere and we talk about a lot called raise the bar, because we want to leave this place. We want our guys to leave this place and the team better than they found it. And especially from where we were COVID and just post-COVID to where we are now and where we want to be as a program, that's probably the number one priority is everything you do has to be better than you did it the last time. We stress that almost every single day. And the other part of it, again, some of these things are very similar to Zach's. It's important we find guys who want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. A lot of times, most times at any college level, these guys are the best player on their high school teams. A lot of times they're the best player on their AAU teams. Well, that changes almost immediately when they step foot on the college campus, because on a college team there can only be one best player. Well, I have a roster of 19 guys, right? All 19 were the best player for the last 17 years of their life. Well, that has to change immediately. So if guys are ready, and we vet this out through the recruiting process, we have these conversations, you have to be ready to kind of give that up a little bit, take a step back and understand like, hey, this program has been here before. It's going to be here while you're here, and it's going to be a program long after you're gone. Like, but let's make it better while you're here. So are you ready to be something, a part of something that's a little bit bigger than you? And at the end of the day, and this is the third thing I think for us and for me is personality wise is we have to find the joy in what we're doing. It's really hard work. It's really hard at any level to be a college athlete. I think in particular a college basketball player because of where the season falls. I think we're one of only 2 or 3 sports that's both semesters. Right, so they're losing out on some of the Christmas breaks and some of the other breaks that some of the other student athletes have. We're playing in both semesters. We're practicing in both semesters. So it's very, very challenging. And you have to be able to find the joy in that and enjoy what you're doing. Because as coaches, like we're asking a lot of you. You know, we're going to get the best out of you. And there's days you may not agree with how far and how hard we're pushing you. But at some point you have to be able to take a bird's eye view and be like, yeah, this is really, really fun. I'm lucky to have this opportunity.
Now, both of you alluded to working in a program that you are trying to rebuild right now and how part of rebuilding that program is elevating a standard. I want our listeners to know that the second half of this interview is going to be exclusively devoted to how we do that, what recruiting actually looks like, and philosophically, the steps you take to get there. It's important to me before then, though, that we learn a little bit more about your backgrounds and dispel a few more myths. I have always had a hypothesis about this, and you two are kind of 2 first-class exhibits of this hypothesis. The 2 of you at the collegiate level were shooting guards. Now, you could do other things. I don't want Smiley to hit me over the head with a Sports Illustrated picture dunking. You said not me, Zach.
Could we? What else? Name some things we could do, Jared. I'm curious.
I saw some dunks. I thought it was pretty dope. Some lockdown defense, fighting hard over screens.
Oh man, that's funny.
Now in fairness, just like you guys said, you were younger when you started and you didn't know what you were looking for. That was me when I was with you guys. So maybe I was giving you too much credit. I don't think that. I thought you were great.
Well, I appreciate it, Jared.
Well, however, here's what I will say. In order to continuously be a value add as a true shooting guard on a Division I basketball team, you have to have a relentless work ethic to consistently master your jump shot, be able to get it off quicker, be able to get it off from a bunch of different situations, off down screens, off stagger screens, off flare screens, off the dribble. And what I know about prolific shooting guards is they are insanely disciplined about elevating their standard. And I have now seen a number of shooting guards on both the men's and women's side get into coaching, and something that's very black and white for them when they talk to their athletes is, you say you want this, but I don't see you doing what you say you want to do. How much does that actually play into your coaching? Because this is an important one for me. You guys lived that standard. How much are you preaching that to your players, and how important is it to you to try to bring in recruits that you think are going to live to that type of standard?
You want to take that one first, Zach?
All right. Man, that's
That's
so
the
good
first
because
assist of my career right there, and usually I just catch it shooting. So
I love it, man. That's good. That's really good. That's everything. Like and
Okay.
like it's something I'm super passionate about because it's what allowed me to be the player I was is just how I worked and how I approached it, and I want it to be a huge part of our program. That's essentially when I referred to choose the path. Like that's essentially what it means. Like we define that as like, are you willing to pursue the work that greatness requires? Like, are
Right.
you willing to do what it takes to be successful? I don't want to just hear it. Like I need to see it, and that's so important to me in the process. As Sean talked about, passion, like urgency. You can say it however you want, but I want guys in our program that want to chase something special and they're willing to say it, but it's obvious to everyone by how they work that they're willing to do what it takes to chase it. And that's
Mm.
why we we lift 6 a.m. in the mornings, right? Like our team lifts in the fall and the spring with their strength coach 6 o'clock in the mornings because it takes it, right?
Prove
To
it.
be great, it takes a level of sacrifice and a level of work and commitment to do something really special. So it's a huge thing for me. It is a big part of my playing experience, but it's also I want it to be a big part of the program that we build and we create. You know, we have a bunch of guys like it's obvious you look different now when you step on campus this fall than when you left in the spring, and the only way you do it is if your actions match your words and you do what it takes to be successful. And I think it's so important at our level. So Division III, we can't work with them in the offseason. We can't work with
Right.
them in the summer.
Yep.
Guys who are self-motivated, guys who are passionate about this thing and building a culture and a program of guys who are like-minded in that is huge to success at this level. Because I can't put an iron fist on them. I can't say, hey, you got to be here when. Like they gotta be motivated within themselves to chase it. So it's a big part of who I am, and it's a big part of what I want our program to be about. So I love that you brought that up because I think it's so important to success.
Yep.
Sean, I actually
Yeah.
want to actually change it for you because having some conversations with you recently off camera, I know that your philosophy on this is similar to Zach's.
Yep.
And what Zach just said is really valuable. So I want to add a small twist to this, which is, Sean, you and I, even though I was on the women's side and you were on the men's side, we crossed paths a little bit at the D3 level because you were a lead assistant at Hobart when they were having the most successful seasons in the history of the Hobart program, including a Sweet 16 run that could have gone further had it not been the pandemic-shortened season. So I know from talking to you that there's a huge difference between sustaining excellence and building excellence. So I guess my question for you is, you and I both agree with everything Zach just said. How do you find it? What are you looking for in a kid on the recruiting trail that makes you go, Sean, that one? That
Yep.
kid is the kid I talk to and I invest in.
Yep. It really takes a recruiting approach. We're really doing our homework, and it takes a lot of effort that might not make sense if you don't understand what we're talking about, like the intangible type stuff that we're looking for. Because and I don't want to get I don't want to get too much into specific recruiting stuff yet. I don't know, but what's important to us and to me here isn't what usually happens when the ball is live during a game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like very little. Like when we're looking for a kid who we think is going to work hard when we're not around in the summertime, like Zach said, we can't touch our guys. So when we're looking for that, we're looking for a guy who's internally motivated, who's self-motivated, who's going to get better over time, and going to be about his teammates. It's all the other things that we're looking for. So we call it circling the wagons, which there's a lot of Bills fans around here. So, we try and pay homage to that a little bit. But we have so many conversations while we're recruiting with everyone except the recruit. Not except the recruit, but like we talk to the recruit, but like parents, coaches, trainers, school counselors, principals, superintendents, aunts, uncles, everyone we get, coaches on teams that played that guy, right? What's he like? Right? If you played against them, he scored 30 points on you guys, but you beat him. How is he in the handshake line after the game? right? Did you see him in the gym before the game? Was he goofing around with his friends in the stands, or was he getting shots up before the game started? Like, all of that stuff is so important. And it's funny because it sounds like you can figure it out doing all these things, talking to school counselors. Hey, what's this guy like? Like, you think he's pretty self-motivated? You can always be surprised. You can always be surprised when a kid gets to campus and maybe it doesn't turn out exactly how you want, but we do our homework to make sure that happens as little as possible. Because the stuff that's happening between whistles, between games at an AAU tournament is a kid between games. You know how AAU tournaments are in these big places with a million courts and everything. Like, is he hanging out with his teammates, or is he going off on his own, doing his own thing on his phone, etc.? Right? Is he stretching with his teammates? Is he hydrating? Is he eating right between games? Or is he going to have one game and the next game he looks exhausted because he didn't treat his body the right way? Like, all of that little stuff isn't little stuff, right? Little thing, big thing. Because once you're on your own on a college campus without parents around, without a coach hawking you all the time, like we'll teach you how to do it, but we're not going to do it for you, right? So you have to be motivated a little bit. And that's what we try and do, at least when we're recruiting, is to find those guys. And all it is just like, sounds like a lot. It just takes a little bit more effort on our part, my assistants. It just takes a little bit more time, a few more phone calls, a few more conversations, just to kind of get a well-rounded view of what a kid is like, kind of deep down. What motivates him? What gets him going? Does he play better when he's upset? Does he play better when he's mad? Does he shoot after a bad shooting game, or does he go home and sulk? Does he shoot after he just scored 30 points, or does he go out and celebrate, right? Like, that's the sort of stuff that I think as players, Zach and I had. It's like our regimented, I guess our personality is just aligned for like what we wanted to do. We knew if we scored, we went 8 for 10, right? We were going to wake up the next morning and shoot just like we did if we went over 10. It was our habits, right? And how can we find guys that have those habits? Coach, is he in the gym every day? Yeah, I have to unlock the gym for this kid before school every single day. Awesome. Right? That's the sort of stuff we look for.
So this is, to me, a really good opportunity for us to dive in a little bit more to the nuts and bolts of recruiting. Something that the three of us have in common is, in varying capacities, we have all helped build a program to bigger heights. Like, we were brought in to do something. We accomplished the mission. And all three of us can attest that is an extremely challenging thing to do. It is not easy to elevate a program. So both of you have now alluded to some of the characteristics, be it intangibles, hard skills, soft skills, that give a competitive edge to a player or to your team. So I'm going to give you one example. This is like a big one for me, and I'd love it if you can kind of piggyback with one big one for yourselves. So for me, when I was out on the road recruiting, a huge thing for me was energy givers. And I have a story I shared on social media. One of my favorite kids I ever coached, D3 level, her AAU coach kind of gave me a heads up on her. It was the first time I was going to see her play live. And for the first 30 minutes of a 32-minute game, she did not score. And she just did everything else. And she could not get a shot to fall, but it never affected her rebounding. It never affected her defense. It never affected her communication. And then it was a good AAU. You know what I'm talking about, because bad AAU is also this was good AAU. Really? And she reads. This is a forward. She's on the perimeter. She makes a really good read on an aggressive defender. Backdoor cuts. Her teammate hits her. She makes an inside hand finish, and before the ball even goes in, she's sprinting back on defense, pointing at the person that threw her the pass. And I remember turning to the person that was with me, recruiting with me, and I was like, her. That's the kid. So, can you guys give an example of, something that you see, if this wows you, or something you see that you will definitively pursue someone if you see behavior X on the court? And obviously, they meet the talent threshold.
Right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
For me, Probably two things, and they kind of go hand in hand, similar to what you're talking about, Jared. But if I see, especially with the way, and I don't want to downplay anything, especially with the way basketball sometimes is played now, because again, of guys watch the game at the highest level of the NBA, and offensively, guys are so good, it sometimes looks to the naked eye like the effort on the defensive end isn't always there.
Right.
If I see a guy who consistently gives defensive effort on and off the ball, possession after possession, that's a huge like, hey, you're gonna get a couple stars next to your name, and we're gonna make sure we follow up on you. Again, if everything else they do is good enough, right? Like if you can consistently give effort on that end, because if you're playing AAU basketball, let's be honest, like 9 guys out of 10 aren't playing great defense. Whether it's not coached, whether it's just not important, whether guys are trying to score a few points because they know college coaches are there. Like if you have like the wherewithal to give defensive effort, you don't have to be a great defender. Like there's a lot we can teach you in college to become a good defender. But if you're willing to give the energy and the focus on that end and on the other end, then that's going to excite me a little bit. And the other thing on top of that, which sometimes goes hand in hand with defense, but can go beyond that, is communication. If there's a high school guy, or at times with how things work out with us, like a junior college guy or a transfer who's communicating, consistently communicating on the defensive end, on the offensive end, in timeouts, in a huddle, from the bench. If someone's communicating, that's huge, because there's not a lot of guys who, and I don't think it's coached. It's never been coached really that well if you're a really good player in middle school and high school, because it's not really necessary. You can just be better, right? You can just get the play. You can make the play without having to talk. I think we all know at the college level, communication is so huge. And if there's one guy, and that's one thing I don't have to teach as much, and you can come in and know how to talk, well, then you're really coming in almost at a sophomore level, as a freshman, if you can communicate effectively on the floor. So those would probably be my two things. Like, oh my gosh, like, did you see this kid talking out here? Like, he might have to figure out what to say. I don't care. We tell our guys all the time, right? Like, doesn't matter what you say something. If you do it, say it. If you see it, say it. Like, if you're wrong and you say it, well, guess what? You just become right because no one else said it, right? So that's a huge part for us. It's like, if you can communicate, if you can give effort on both ends, in an AAU game, hey, let's go, right? Like, you might be the right guy.
Love that. What do you got, Zach?
I think there's two. I think there's a basketball side of things, and there's more the other stuff. The first one is going to sound very coach speak, but it's actually something that we all, I think, watch a lot, is body language. Like body language of the athlete, yep, plus body language of the parent. And that's what the parents sometimes forget, is like, there's guys we'll cross off the list because the parents' body language is just like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, I don't want to have that be a part of the program. And so that's one. Like I actually enjoy, if there's a kid I know can play, right? Like, a kid I know is the level, I want to see them not play well, because when they don't play well, a lot of character stuff gets revealed. Like, how are they with their teammates? How are they with their coaches? How are they with the officials? How are they with the opponent? Like, that body language stuff reveals a lot and actually says way more than their words sometimes. And something that we are going to look for, because you're right, building is really hard. And through the process of building, things are not going to go your way a lot, especially early. You're going to lose some games. You're going to have games as a player where you play really well. If you're young, right, you're inconsistent. Usually if you're building, you're playing young guys, and they're going to be inconsistent. Are you willing to stay the course? There's a kid I watched recently, a kid that's one of our top recruits. He does both the things I'm talking about. One is the body language. The second one is just make the right play, right? But I watched him recently, and he just is not phased at all. He just stays the course and stays the course and stays the course and stays the course. And I think that's so important, because the body language usually reveals something that's going on, and usually something selfish, right? It's usually focused on yourself. If you're willing to have be visibly like that with your body language, usually you're self-focused, and it's not going to be what goes into being successful and goes into winning. That's the first one. The second one is, I alluded to it, just like, we want guys in the program who make the right play. And it sounds so simple. It's so simple, but you can have 30 and we won't be impressed.
Right.
Because you didn't make the right basketball play. You didn't do the things that actually impact winning, right? So if you shoot 25 times and 15 of them are contested pull-ups or contested whatever, like that's not what we're going to allow when you come here. So that's not what's going to impress us. What's going to impress us is you force the help and you make the extra pass, right? You make one more. Okay, your point guard, you advance ball in transition when someone's open ahead of you. Like those are the things that coaches I think look for and watch, because those are the little things that dictate and impact winning and dictate and impact success.
I really appreciate your guys' lens on this, because you prompted something. I wasn't even prepared to talk about this to you guys, but it's a thought I had because I was talking to a couple of younger players that I mentor about this exact thing. A lot of times when you look at rebuilding teams at the collegiate level, people just take a snapshot at their record, and the record doesn't always tell the story of how close a team is. What I specifically mean by that is I remember our as we were trying to turn the corner at Canisius, we were constantly in close games that we couldn't finish because we got mentally phased. And I know in your journeys, that's a part of it too. A lot of times people are like, you're rebuilding, so you must just lose every game by 30. No, we're rebuilding. And the most important thing about rebuilding is having enough people with that winning edge, to your point, Zach, where you don't get phased as the game gets tight. Or if you make a mistake, you have the ability to just do the next right thing. Or as you were saying, Sean, if you're 8 for 10 or 0 for 10, your habits are the same the next day. And I want recruits and their parents to really understand the fine print of what Sean and Zach are talking about right now, which is they have their ways of identifying before you arrive on a college campus if they think you're going to do those things to help clear the winning edge. And if you don't do those things, it's nothing personal and it's not about you. But the recruiting pool is so competitive that they will find someone that can do those things. And that's where your own initial drive is so, so important. So I thank you guys so much for sharing that. Zach, you also quickly touched on parents. And of note, there is a parent that we all know who is currently navigating their children through the recruiting process for the first time. He is former UB assistant coach and just mentor to so many people, Jim Quitchoff. And I recently caught up with Coach Quitch, and he shared something really interesting with me, which is, for context on Coach Quitch, he coordinated a lot of ops, a lot of recruiting efforts for UB, maybe the most organized and meticulous person I've ever met in my life. And his whole thing was planning. But he shared with me when we caught up recently how surprised he was at how much paperwork and additional processes are involved for families and parents once you're not being recruited at the scholarship level. And at the scholarship level, you sign your NIL, you do your financial aid paperwork, and that's it. Now, all of a sudden, you're at the D3 level or non-scholarship D2 level, and there's a financial aid pre-read, an admissions pre-read, additional financial aid paperwork at the national level. And I think most parents are ice cold to that. So I would love it if the two of you could maybe just give your favorite nugget of advice that you give to parents on the recruiting trail for some of these processes that await them, because the parents are much more involved in the back end of a D3 process than they are a scholarship process.
I think it's safe to say I've been on at a private Division III institution, now at a state school here. So I think it's safe to say that every institution is probably a little bit different. Right. What I say may be different than what Zach says today, because like at a state school, there's a little bit more paperwork on my end for not just recruiting, but for anything I have to do, right? There's things that I have to make sure I take care of from a paperwork standpoint that maybe I didn't have to when I was an assistant coach at a private school, right? So
sure.
I think every institution is a little bit different. One thing. So I think just in general, you have to be prepared to be very, very hands-on with the recruiting process of your son or daughter if they're getting actively recruited by Division III institutions. Especially if you're fortunate enough that your son or daughter has multiple options at the Division III or maybe non-scholarship Division II level, because the only way to be able to compare apples to apples or even compare apples to oranges is if you go through the process correctly at each school. We run into it a lot where, because we're a state school, things may move a little bit quicker at a private school, and they may get a financial aid readback from a competing school before they get ours back. Well, that we have to make sure we communicate that before that happens, or we may lose that kid. Right. Hey, listen, this is about the length of time a process takes here. This is when you're going to get your read. This is when you get your acceptance letter. You're going to get an email first, then you're going to get it in the mail. Like, that communication is very, very important, both from us, both to the student athlete and to their parents. As a parent, you have to continue to communicate with the coaches and communicate to your son or daughter. Hey, listen, like, don't freak out if you don't hear from Fredonia right now. It might take another day or two. It's okay. Then we'll sit down. You almost have to have a little bit more control of the emotions of the situation, because let's face it, like, if I'm a 17-year-old student athlete and I'm getting recruited by, let's say, 6 schools, right? I'm getting phone calls probably almost every day. I'm getting text messages multiple times a day, emails, right? I'm going to be very, very excited, but potentially overwhelmed with just the information. Right? This school's asking me to do this. This school's asking me to send this paperwork in. This school's asking me for this. As a parent, you kind of have to make sure that you keep the emotions in check. And hey, get a checklist for each school. What do we need done? Coach, what do we need done? Right? Son or daughter, what do we need done? What did coach talk to you about last time? Oh, I just saw you got off the phone with coach. What do you say? What do you need done? Let me help you out. Because I think that's one of the unfortunate things is, like, it's a little bit more hands-on at the Division III level, working through financial aid paperwork, whether it's federal stuff, FAFSA stuff, different application processes, maybe essays. Maybe you're applying for grants to maybe help out and supplement. Maybe you're applying for other scholarships. Like, there's just a little bit more to do. And if you're not prepared for that, the process might feel convoluted. It's really not, but it can catch up with you quickly if you're getting recruited by 10 schools. Versus, just for comparison, if you're getting recruited by 5 Division I schools and you have full scholarship offers to either, all you have to do is pick one, and the rest is, sign on the dotted line and you're good to go. Right. And I think that's the point of view a lot of people get, and even a lot of parents and families get, is like, well, this should be easy. They should just take care of it for me. As a coach at a Division III institution, there are processes in place on campus for application for financial aid for admission that I have to wait on. I can't push things through it in certain points. I think an understanding of that is important. Like, I can call financial aid and ask where stuff is, but you're probably going to get financial aid information before me, right? And I think just an understanding of that process helps, and just having making sure parents have a feel for, like, hey, you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork here to make sure your son or daughter has an unbelievable opportunity wherever he or she goes.
Love that. What do you got, Zach?
Yeah, I'll take a little different direction. Just some stuff I guess advice I would give parents is, well, the first question I ask a kid when I talk to them is really like, what are the 3 or 4 things that you really want? Like, what is a fit to you? Because we talked about fit earlier. Fit is everything to me through this process, and I think that's true of scholarship schools. I think that's true of non-scholarship schools. Like, what's your fit? And the only way you can know what a fit is if you can articulate what the fit is. And I think it's amazing how many times we'll talk to a kid early in the process and they don't really know. So I think one of the pieces of advice I'd give parents is knowing your son or daughter. How can you help them through that process of figuring out, okay, these are 3-4 things that you need to be successful, that need you, that fit you, that could help you make the most of your college experience. Because the reality is, if you can figure out what those 3 or 4 things are, what the fit is program-wise, not from a school standpoint, it's going to whittle down the list pretty quickly itself. And it's going to get you to a point, okay, here are the pools that are left over. So for us being a faith-based school, if that's a big deal, like, there's only so many options, right? It's going to whittle down the list pretty quickly. that also then means you're not going through that process that Sean just talked about with 25 schools. It means you know the ones that are going to be options for you, and you can now explore those options and then communicate with the other coaches. Hey, I appreciate it. I'm very thankful for the time you invested in my son or daughter, but just be honest, like, it's not the right fit for us. The best thing we can hear as coaches, besides yes, is no early, so that we're not wasting our time on individuals that are never really going to be a fit, or we don't really check the boxes that they want, and that's okay. But you can't do that until you know what the fit is for you. The second thing I would say is, and I learned this hard way because I had to transfer, is there's a lot of coaches that are going to tell you what you want to hear. And I think the big piece of advice is, like, there's no bad questions, and ask everyone questions. Players, to the coaches, to the people around the coaches. Like, your job is to figure out what that coaching staff, what those people are really, really about, and how they're going to treat the players in their program. I got blindsided. In my first play, Northern Arizona, my freshman year, and I transferred to UB, which was way better. But we just didn't get to the bottom of it the way we needed to. So I think that's the second piece of advice, is, like, there's no bad questions. Like, we want our parents to be engaged with us. Like, we're recruiting to ask the questions. We're going to be an open book. We're going to be real. We're not perfect. We're going to share where we're not, and the ways that we're trying to grow. But that's another piece of advice I would say is, like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't just rely on your son or daughter to figure it out. Be involved. Like, be involved and get the information that you need to feel comfortable about it.
Yeah. To add one thing,
go ahead. Please.
Something that made sense. We hear, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think, like, we hear a lot of times, because we have a lot of conversations with just parents, right? We'll call mom, we'll call dad. Hey, how's it going, right? What we hear a lot of times, is, okay, here's what I think. I really like you. I think this is a good fit, or I think it's not a good fit. But at the end of the day, the decision's his. The decision's hers. Like, okay, most of the time, right, the parents are spending the money. Division III level, right, we don't have scholarships, so someone's paying, right? Now, if there's a kid who's paying his own way, by all means, okay? But I think there has to be a level of guidance. What Zach's talking about is, like, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, again, young men and women, right? They don't always know what the right fit is for them and what could lead to them having a successful 4-year career and a successful future after college. So I think there has to be some input there where it's like, yeah, it is their decision, but it's really a family decision. Like, there has to be a little bit of guidance from the parents or aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever's really having those conversations with the student athlete of, like, okay, tell me what you think. I'm going to tell you what I think, and then let's talk about this together, instead of just handing the keys to a 17-year-old, right, and letting him make one of probably the biggest decision of his or her life so far. Because like Zach said, the excitement of that situation can lead to being blinded from, oh, hey, that coach was really cool. But if you were on a visit for, I don't know, let's say you were on campus for 8 or 9 hours and you saw the head coach for 45 minutes, he might have been really cool for 45 minutes. But guess what? Like as a head coach, I'm with the recruits the entire time they're here, right? Because that's important to me, because I know that the kids and the parents have to trust me, because the parents are handing their kids over to me to take care of them for 4 years, right? So I'm not just going to pop in, hey, like, have the assistant coach or whoever guide them around campus, the guys, and then, hey, like, how's it going, man? Great to meet you. All right, see you later. I'll see you later. Right? Like, that's very important in our program, is like all these little things, like Zach could ask the questions, right? Because you can be blindsided and just give some guidance, right? Give some guidance, because, I mean, parents have had a lot more life experience, both with relationships and decision-making, than a high school kid who really hasn't made huge life-altering decisions yet. So give some guidance.
This is so important that you just interjected and shared this, because I want to share an example that I saw firsthand of when this goes wrong. Disclaimer: what I am about to say is not reflective of every AAU coach, so please before you wind up clutching the pearls, ready to just like take a swing at me, I'm not talking about all of you. But I have, and perhaps Sean and Zach, you have experienced this too, encountered some AAU coaches that either A, do not entertain conversations with D3 coaches at all, or B, totally do not understand the Division III process. So here is why the advice that they just gave you is so important. I had a kid come visit campus once after their AAU coach insisted that her grades were pristine, and the mom insisted that she would be academically fine after I had been requesting her transcript for multiple weeks, but they couldn't get their hands on it. Kid comes and visits campus, completely falls in love with campus, and I find out 4 days later that not only is she not an academic qualifier for the school I was working at that time, she would struggle to get into most Division III schools that she was currently entertaining at that time. And it became a very important educational moment for that family, where the mom, who previously had never really checked out the like academic profile of the school or looked at financial aid information online beforehand, started doing it. And the AAU coach, who had never done that beforehand, started doing it. But what I guess is the most important thing for me, supplementing the incredible wisdom the two of you just shared, is you cannot assume that your mentor has this down. You have to DIY this process as a family. For more steps on how to DIY, literally email and ask questions, to Zach's exact point. Sit down and have conversations with your kid. Try to get a better feel for the head coach. I would agree with you, Sean, that the head coaches that are willing to spend more time with you during your actual process are probably the ones that are more invested in you in that moment. All of these little things matter, but they don't matter at all if you don't do your homework in advance to establish that you're an actual qualifier and an actual fit. With that said, we're down to our last question. I always like to give our guests the opportunity to be Mythbusters. This journey basically started for me getting data about the recruiting process and sharing with recruits and their families like, hey, this thing you thought you knew, that's not actually what coaches are looking for. So I want to kind of give you an open-ended forum here. Is there a big misunderstanding about this whole process or about D3 basketball itself that you with a live microphone would love to just kind of get on your soapbox for a minute and be like, no, this is not how it works. Here's how it works. I'll leave you both the floor.
All right. I think for me, so Sean and I have a unique experience in that we both play Division I basketball, right? We both had solid careers and all that. Now we're coaching Division III. I think the one I want to talk about is this whole idea of like the level of Division III basketball. Like Division III basketball is really good. And like high level Division III can play with scholarship schools. And the guys that we actually want are guys who are getting Division II, getting scholarship school interest, but because of the fit of the institution, they're like, this is the place I want to be. I respect the ones I talk to, I respect, and I get the whole appeal of chasing the highest level. I get it. I understand it. But the individuals I talk to, the recruits I talk to that are like, hey, fit's the most important to me. I respect that a lot. And I think it's shows a lot of maturity, because the reality is like the best programs in Division III are filled with scholarship level guys. Okay, I talked about 3 guys that are playing Division I basketball from our league. Our league also has a unique story in the sense that St. Thomas was in our league. They went Division I. Okay, so they're in the Summit League. The first year with the identical roster of Division III, they won 10 games at the Division I level. Okay, year 2 with a bunch of Division III guys, they won 19 games. This past year with a bunch of Division III guys still, including a Division III transfer from our league, who was second team our league in that league, they won 20 games or whatever it was. Okay, so like this whole idea that sometimes the Division III gets this vibe of like it's almost glorified intramurals or all that kind of stuff. No, Division III basketball is really, really good, and I'd encourage you to watch a little bit of the high level stuff, because I think you'll be amazed. Like I think you'll be impressed, and it's a beautiful brand of basketball in a lot of ways. It's a fun level to play at, especially if you find the fit of your institution. But I think that's a big one for me and I run into it a lot, is like, hey, like, no, this is legit. And this is, you watch high level Division III, like these dudes can play. The coaches at our level are really, really good. And it's a very, very fun, very, very enjoyable experience.
Awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. What you got, Mr. Smiley?
It's hard to, I could talk about the same things Zach talked about because it's so true, right? Like, I think if I took it in a little bit different direction, I guess maybe I'll talk about two things. From a student athlete perspective, if I'm looking at schools, right? If I'm a student athlete, I'm looking at Division II or Division I, Division III. Like, again, I try not to look at levels, look at fit. At the end of the day, right? Like, you're going to play college basketball. Why? And most people, look at the numbers, right? Like, most people are going to get an education, right? Like 4% of high school players play in college anywhere, right? 1% of any college player plays professionally. 1%. So 99% of any college basketball player is playing college basketball to get an education. So make that number one priority, at least like 1A, 1B, right? That has to be the biggest piece of it. And I think too often, and I was guilty of this coming out of high school myself, is like it was a basketball driven decision, right? I wanted to play at the highest level possible. That's what drove me. I put on all this work. I wanted to see it pay off, right? Fortunately, it did, but you never know, right? Like, so understand why you're doing it, right? And find a place that fits you academically too, because your future is really the most important thing, because you can have an experience, a basketball experience as a very good player at a Division III school that's much better than what your experience might be at that Division II school that's recruiting you late in your senior year because they just need to fill their roster spots, right? So understanding that, and again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So this is why you have this podcast, Jared. This is why we're talking about it, is because for parents and for student athletes, like, the experience in 4 years while you're there, I've seen it firsthand of guys we see so many players, very, very similar talent levels, very similar games. One chases Division II scholarship, which great. Like, if you can get to your school paid for, do it. Like, school's way too expensive nowadays. Right? Like, all for it. We tell guys all the time, I'm not going to talk you out of a scholarship. I'm just going to tell you what the benefits of our institution are, right? Guy goes to play Division II basketball because he wants to chase Division II scholarship. Great. Same talent level guy, same size, let's say same everything, goes to a Division III program. He may come to a Division III program. He may be conference rookie of the year. He may win a conference championship. He may be an all-conference player. He may be an all-American, right? Again, same talent level guy may play 8 to 10 minutes a game at the Division II level, depending on how good he is. Now, he might figure it out and get really good and do the same thing. But I'm just talking about, like, what's your experience? And goes back to Zach talking about fit. What kind of experience do you want as a player? Do you want to just say you're on a team, right? Go for it, right? Do you want to have a chance as the best player from your high school and AU team? Do you want to have a chance to be the best player on a Division III team, or to be a part of something very, very special and play minutes and have huge impact on the floor in games at Division III level? Maybe win some individual awards, which not hugely important, but can make the experience better. That can be the decision. So I think if you really just dive into, okay, like what are you really, you spend a lot of money on AU and travel, and you put a lot of work in the gyms and trainers, but like, you're doing this all why? You're doing it to give yourself an opportunity to have a choice of great institutions for college, for an education, to better your life for the future, right? 99% of the people who play in college aren't doing all of that work through their first 16, 17 years of their life to go play professionally, because it's just not going to happen. And I think understanding that, kind of the reality of some of that, is very, very important, because I think by the time you're 17 or 18, like, you can have a pretty good idea of, like, yeah, you might have what it takes to play professionally, even if it's overseas, or you might not. But either way, have an unbelievable education. Like, Division III schools, a lot of them provide better educations than Division II, Division I schools. if we're not talking about sports, we're just talking about the academics. Like there's unbelievable Division III academic institutions. And if you can play sports there and have a great experience, that's what it's all about, right? And that's what we try and educate everyone, parents, student athletes. That's what we try and work through. It's like, what kind of experience do you want? Because at the end of the day, how we approach you as coaches, Zach and I both came from Division I level, right?
Right.
Our expectations and our standards and how we coach you is no different. We're not coaching you easier because you're a Division III player. Like your lifts and your conditioning isn't any easier because you're a Division III player, right? It might be harder because you got to balance it with more stuff.
Right.
And you got to find a way to do it on your own in the summertime, because our expectation when you come back in the fall is the same as a Division I coach's fall expectations who's been coaching you all summer, right? So you better be self-motivated. So I think very, very similar, I guess, what Zach's saying. But I think just have a feel for why you're doing it. Education's always going to be the most important thing, whether you're a scholarship Division I athlete or a Division III athlete. It doesn't matter. You're doing it for the education. And if you get good enough and you work hard enough and you get to play professionally and make some money doing it, do it. But, right, the professional career is only so long as well.
Right.
You still need the education.
This was a tremendous value add, and there was intention behind this. These are two great, proven young head coaches that have intentionally taken on jobs in outstanding Division III athletic conferences that are looking to build. And if you are a recruit or a parent, this is the type of advice that you really need to be taking to heart, because these are the people that are recruiting and trying to build the most tenaciously. And remember, it is harder to build than it is to sustain. This is the grind part. Sean, Zach, thank you so much for your time. This is just tremendously, tremendously valuable, and we'll definitely do this again sometime.
Always, man. Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Really
Good to
appreciate
see
it.
you guys.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you got something out of today's podcast. If you'd like to learn more about anything related to Nail the Recruiting Process, the book, my work, maybe wanting to work with me one-on-one, anything under the sun, you're going to visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram or at Jared the Coach on Twitter and TikTok. Both of those handles are just one word, no characters, no spaces. If you'd like to ask something of me directly, if you'd like a question that maybe you want answered on a future podcast, or if you have an idea for something we should talk about in a future episode, please reach out to me via email. I would love to hear from you. My email address is recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, then the word gear combined. recruitinggear@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to catch you next time.